Hey, what's up, everybody? So the Packers are currently sitting at 3-1-1 here after Week 6, bye last week, win this week after a tie with the Dallas Cowboys. And I would say it's been a relatively good start for this Packers team. Could it have been better? Yes, but 3-1-1, sitting at the top of the NFC North, it's a pretty solid place to be if you were the Green Bay Packers. But I want to go over a Micah Parsons quote about this Packers defense. And right now, if we look at this Packers defense, I was curious this morning to see where they've matched up compared to last season's defense, because I think adding Micah Parsons, you assume that this defense would be much, much better. And I think that when they're playing their best, I think they are. But currently, just looking at some statistics, and then I'll get right into the quote. But according to, I was looking at NFL Pro this morning, some different stats here. And last season, the Packers, their scoring defense, they were the sixth best scoring defense in the NFL, allowing 19.9 points per game. Very good showing overall last year. Currently, they've dropped to the 10th best scoring defense, allowing 20.4 points per game, so very similar to last year. They're allowing currently about 0.5 points less per game. And so there are moments, especially yesterday against the Bengals, where you think to yourself, like, how are the Bengals moving the ball down the field so easily and scoring, getting to the red zone, putting up points? It was a little bit concerning. But I want to go over now here this quote from Micah Parsons. This was in a Tom Silverstein article at PackersNews.com, and I'll leave the whole article linked down below. But here's the quote from Parsons. "You talk about pass rush is the equalizer. Teams are max 7, Parsons said of using 7 blockers against the Packers' 4-man rush. I mean, you look at our time clock, teams are throwing it at a faster rate than anyone else in the league. It's tough on the DBs, it's tough on the D-line, it's tough on everyone. Teams are coming in and saying, we're going to slow play and try to keep the game close with runs, checkdowns. So it's a challenge, and it's new for everyone. Half is not used to it. I'm kind of used to it with the double chips. It's just everyone involved is not used to just seeing constant 2-man or 3-man routes, which is a challenge for everyone." And so that's the thing with this Packers defense right now, is other teams recognize how good this Packers pass rush is. And if you give them a lot of time, there's a very good chance that they're going to get to the quarterback. And so we saw the Bengals get the ball out very quickly. And for the first half, the Bengals couldn't do a thing. It was one of the uglier offensive performances I've seen in a first half. It felt like they could not move the ball. It was punt after punt after punt. And then to start the second half, they have that like 10-minute, 17-play drive, just quick pass after quick pass, a short run. And you have to give the Bengals credit. They have one of the best receiver duos in the NFL, and Joe Flacco was just finding them for 5 yards, 7 yards, a few yards, and they marched all the way down the field and did that. And so Parsons is talking about how teams are just getting the ball out quickly, and he's speaking about yesterday about how they're bringing in more guys to protect and trying to stop the Packers' front that way. And so as more and more teams do this, the Packers are going to have to find a solution. And I think one of the issues is that, you look at those 2 drives where they score in the second half. The Packers, couldn't really stop them in the red zone. And I was curious to see, how this Packers red zone defense has looked so far this year. And just when it comes to where they rank in the NFL, they're not really good. They're a bottom 10 red zone defense right now, which makes sense why they're not at the top of the NFL currently, but they're 23rd in percentage of time that opposing offenses are scoring. Opposing offenses are scoring at 64.29% of the time. And so that's an area where the Packers defense needs to clean things up. And I think that for this Packers team, the hope was that this defense was an elite unit, and I think they have the ability to play at that elite level, and they're still a very, very good defense. But I think with Micah Parsons coming in, the expectation was that they would be much better than last season, and for the first couple games, that's what it looked like. Even against the Browns, incredible game against the Browns, and Flacco, when he had a few better receivers, he was able to get more done in the second half. Then you have the Cowboys game, they allow 40 points. It was like, oh gosh, what was that? We hadn't really seen a performance where an offense really, handled the Packers, played really well against the Packers defense. And so if these teams are going to be just throwing a ton of quick passes, it's sort of tough. And I think that when you look yesterday, there were a lot of plays where the Packers corners were on Jamar Chase, but Flacco put the ball perfectly, and Jamar Chase is so good that even if you're, Keyshawn Nixon on that one touchdown, it looked like he was full on grabbing Jamar Chase's arm or shoulder on that one. Maybe should have been defensive pass interference, and still Jamar Chase was able to catch that pass. And so I think that if other teams sort of try this and try to get the ball out as quickly, I don't think it'll work quite as well. But that's an issue. And Micah Parsons brought up, I thought it was interesting, where he said, looking back at this quote, it's new for everyone. Half is not used to it. I'm kind of used to it with the double chips. And so I think for this Packers defense to play at a top-tier level, they have to find a way to shut down some of these, quick routes. And I guess the one thing is when you really try to, not allow these teams to get things going in the short game, if you're like pressing receivers and really, playing up close, if they get beat, then you risk those deep plays. And I guess you'd rather a 5-yard, out and, allow that as opposed to a, 50-yard touchdown. So it could be worse. But I think the biggest thing is the Packers defense needs to get red zone stops, which they haven't gotten. If you would have stopped the Bengals in the red zone, one of those two drives, the game wouldn't have gotten as close. And just looking overall at this Packers pass rush this year, actually first, looking at this game yesterday, because I was curious, looking at how quickly that Flacco was getting the ball off. So there were actually 5 other teams who had a higher or same, the quarterbacks that these other 5 teams' defenses were facing either had the same time to throw that Flacco had or faster, and 5 of these teams had better pressure percentages than the Green Bay Packers, and there were a few other teams who were slightly higher that had a lower pressure percentage, but the Broncos were facing a quarterback getting the ball off even faster than Flacco, had a 55.2% pressure percentage. The Packers had a 26.1% pressure percentage. The Steelers faced a faster time to throw, had a 41.4% pressure percentage. Same with the Patriots, 46.7%. So other teams are doing it, and maybe that comes down to what Parsons is saying about max protecting. And I don't exactly know how much comparatively the Packers were facing more max protection as opposed to the Steelers or Broncos, but the Packers have to find a way to get pressure, and it's sort of tough when you have teams doing what they are doing against the Packers, but other teams are finding a way to get pressure with quarterbacks throwing at a even faster rate. So a few things to clean up here, and I think that there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this team. And I think that there's clearly very high expectations. If you're the Jets and you come into this season and you have what the Packers have done so far this year with the 10th best scoring defense, I think the Packers offense is around 9th. So a top 10 team overall, you'd be very excited. And I feel good about this Packers team. But there are a lot of question marks for me when it comes to playing your best football against some of the best teams come playoff time. Because the Bengals aren't a great team right now with Joe Burrow, or without Joe Burrow. The Cowboys have one of the worst defenses in the league. They have a great offense. The Browns, not a great team. The Steelers just beat them, I think, 23-9. And the Packers, lose to them. So there's a lot of positives, a lot of things to clean up. But those are my takeaways for today. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe to the channel down below, and I'll see you guys next time.